Hi, we are now in part three of my talk about my speech entitled On Being a Toastmaster. In part one, I told you about my difficulty with overcoming my fear of public speaking, and it took me about a year and 3 months to start delivering speeches. And then in part two, I overcame that fear and delivered 8 speeches within 9 months. Unfortunately, after delivering 8 speeches, I encountered a problem, and that was a doubt. I was wondering what benefit was I getting from being in Toastmasters since I didn't see myself, delivering speeches at all. So, what was the use of learning public speaking skills? Well, in this video, we are going to talk about an event that happened that allowed me to find out what are the advantages of learning how to speak in public. So, let's get on with it. I'll be right back. Okay, now as before with the other videos, I'm going to be showing you short clips of the speech, and then I'm going to stop that clip and talk about the tips, the lessons that I learned, and hopefully you would learn something too as well. So let's get started. And then, near the end of January 2006, I received an email from my boss, a fellow Toastmaster. He wrote, "Eric, I want you to go to Manila to attend the trainer's training seminar." Well, since I am a good subordinate, I went to Manila. Okay, one of the lessons, right, that they teach you in public speaking is to inject some humor into your speech so that the audience may remain engaged. Now, in this clip, I tried about 2 times. You didn't notice it? Well, the audience at that time didn't notice either. That part where I said, a fellow Toastmaster, right? I described my boss as being a fellow Toastmaster, and he wrote me an email, after that episode where I stopped delivering speeches. Now, I was thinking that maybe the audience might think that, okay, Eric, you're in trouble. You haven't been delivering your speeches. Your boss is going to, give you a hard time. Well, he didn't, but that phrase, right, which I thought would be amusing, turned out to be nothing. It seemed as if it just passed through the ears of my audience and had no effect on them. And then that part where I said, well, since I am a good subordinate, I went to Manila, right? It's a little boastful, but again, it had no effect. And yeah, I bombed, but I didn't let that affect me. I continued delivering my speech, but all I thought was, man, being amusing is so hard. But anyway, let's continue. And at the training, the facilitator asked the participants for their expectations, what they wanted to learn from the training. And I was surprised because nearly everyone in the room said these words: "I want to overcome my fear of speaking in front of people. I want to learn how to speak in front of people, to get their attention and keep them interested in the topic. And you know, when I heard these people saying those words, I said, you should join Toastmasters. They'll help you overcome your fear. They'll help you become good speakers. Now, isn't that funny? I mean, there I was, a Toastmaster who was thinking about quitting, and yet I was telling these people to join. Okay, in this clip, I had the opposite effect. In some parts, I wasn't even trying to be funny. I was just telling them, right, that, okay, I told them that, I was surprised when the other participants said that they wanted to overcome their fear of public speaking. They wanted to learn how to speak in public. And some of the audience actually giggled. And I had no idea why. At that time, I didn't know why, but maybe it was because they saw themselves in the shoes of the participants. Because even though they joined Toastmasters, being a Toastmaster doesn't mean that you're confident, doesn't mean that you're skilled, especially when you're new. So you still have that fear, you still have that lack of skills or knowledge about public speaking. So maybe they saw themselves in the shoes of the participants, so that's why maybe they laughed a little bit, not too much, but at least they laughed without my even trying to make them. And then when I said that, that part where I said, you should join Toastmasters. And again, the audience laughed, but I wasn't even trying to be funny. But that part where I said, isn't that funny? I mean, there I was, who was a Toastmaster who was planning to, quit, and then I was asking these other people to join. That didn't draw any laughter. I mean, even though I said, isn't that funny? But yeah, these are, at that time, I found them strange. How do I do this? Being an amusing speaker is such hard work. Although over time, I discovered how to do it. But even though I have delivered 9 speeches before, right? Before this one. And you would probably, if you're not a Toastmaster, you probably expect, okay, he's got 9 speeches under his belt. He probably already knows a lot about public speaking. No, not yet. 10 speeches, 9 speeches, they're almost nothing. You still have a lot to learn. Let's keep going. Now, as part of the training, each participant would come up to the front and then act like he was conducting a training. The others would sit, watch, and listen, and then give their comments and suggestions on how he can improve. So while I waited for my turn, I watched the others perform, and I'd tell them things like, you've got good volume, but you're speaking in a monotone. Try to give it a little more life. Or I'd say, you're using your hands, but your feet are nailed to the floor. You've got space here, use it. And I'd say, look, I can see that you're nervous, but with practice, I think you're going to be a good trainer someday. Okay, one of the things that you learn while you're in Toastmasters is that even though part of it is delivering speeches, the other part of it is learning how to give evaluations. You evaluate the person after he delivers his speech. And that's what I was doing. That was Toastmasters training manifesting itself. So that part where I said, okay, you've got good volume, but you're speaking in a monotone. That guy who did that was talking as if he was reading something, and his voice had no inflection. He had no change of pace or anything. So it was just a flat monotone. So that's what I told him, that you try to give it a little more life. Now, that part where I said, you're moving your hands, but your feet are nailed to the floor. And then I said, look, I can see that you're nervous, but with practice, I think you can be a good trainer someday. That was just one person. That was one of the participants. He was so visibly nervous that he stood rooted right there in one spot. He was talking, but he was gesturing, but he wasn't moving around. So I told him, maybe I think it would be better if you start moving around, moving towards, say, one of the participants, you talk to him, then you move to the other participant, you talk to him, and that way you can establish a connection with your participants. So that's what I said, but I condensed it just to that. You're moving your hands, but your feet are nailed to the floor. And I shortened it. And then that part where I said, I can see that you're nervous, but with practice, I think you can be a good trainer someday. That's also another aspect of evaluation, because one of the things that you should do, other than, in telling them that I liked what you did, or maybe I think that you should do this, or I think you shouldn't do this, part of the evaluation should be that you encourage the speaker to continue his development. And that's what I did. So that was, this clip was about Toastmasters training manifesting itself. Now, finally, it was my turn. Now, I have to ask you to forgive me at this time, because I have to put my modesty aside for a moment, because I just got to tell you, I wowed them. I received comments like, he speaks clearly. His gestures are very appropriate to what he's saying. He made efficient use of the space. And he gives me the impression he knows what he's talking about. And one guy even said, you've got a nice voice. Man, if I were a girl, I'd have a crush on you. Yeah, that's, well, almost exactly how it happened. I went up in front, and then I started acting like I was conducting a training. And after my performance, I received those comments. There were no negative comments. Everything was positive. So again, again, I guess that was Toastmasters training, this coming out. Now, that part where I said, where I said, I wowed them. Actually, I shouted that. In this clip, in this video, it sounds a little more tame, right? Well, that's because I recorded this right here at home in my son's room, which I am using as a studio. And in the next room is my daughter, who is sleeping because she works at night. So I couldn't shout because it might wake her up. But in the actual delivery, in 2006, when I delivered this in front of about 50, and then I think maybe 300-400 people, I shouted. And the response was, well, overwhelming. I mean, the audience went, "Oh yeah," right, and then ooh, and they applauded me, and I wasn't expecting that level of a response. I thought they would just laugh because it was it was a little boastful, right? I mean, I said, I wowed them, but instead of just laughing, they applauded, they shouted, and gosh, that was overwhelming. And then that part where I said, you've got a nice voice, man. If I were a girl, I'd have a crush on you. And the audience loved it. I mean, they laughed so hard, they laughed for several seconds. And in those two instances when they applauded, they cheered, and then when they laughed, they did so for several seconds. And I was afraid that I would go overtime because they wouldn't stop. I had to wait for them to calm down before I started or resumed talking. Now this is a lesson here. There's a lesson here. What I usually do when I deliver a speech, right, or I create a speech, I target for the minimum time. In Toastmasters, every speech is timed. The usual time is 5 to 7 minutes. But for speech number 10, which is a sort of special speech, it's 8 to 10 minutes. So what I do is I target the minimum time, which is 8 minutes. Reason being, if that happens, the audience cheers, the audience applauds, the audience laughs so hard, and it takes them several seconds to, the noise to die down. At least 8 minutes and a few seconds more, maybe 30 seconds more, I'm still safe. I would not reach 10 minutes. But if I target 10 minutes and that happens and it reaches 10 minutes and 30 seconds, I would be overtime. And if this was a contest, I would instantly be eliminated, right? Doesn't matter if your speech was great, doesn't matter if it was well received. If you go overtime, you're eliminated. You just lost. So, that was forefront in my mind when I created the speech. I always target minimum time. You can follow that advice if you want. I know some people who don't, but yeah, you can target if you want. So let's look at the last clip. Now, that kind of comment I could do without, but at that moment, things just came together for me. All of a sudden, I could see clearly what Toastmasters was doing. It's not just about making speeches, and certainly not just for Toastmasters. It was for anything and everyone. Take me. I'm a supervisor. I talk to my people. I give them instructions, clear ones, I hope. I encourage them. I give them feedback, and I try to inspire them. This realization convinced me that I should continue. Okay, I mentioned in my part 2 video that I couldn't see the benefit of being in Toastmasters, even though I was learning how to speak in public, overcoming the fear, but I still couldn't see myself being a public speaker. I had no ambitions of being, say, even mayor or even president of the country. I didn't see myself, doing or making speeches. At this point, that's when I realized I could use this for a lot of things. Because public speaking is not just, you speaking in front of a crowd of maybe 100 or even 1,000 or more people. Public speaking is also about speaking one-on-one or one on a half dozen or one on several tens of people, from one all the way up to thousands of people. That's public speaking, as long as you're talking to people. Now, what does that mean? So you deliver speeches, yeah. You make presentations, that's public speaking. You talk during a meeting, that's public speaking. You talk to, say, as in my case, to a subordinate, that's public speaking. So all of these skills that I learned in Toastmasters was applicable to a lot of things. In fact, after this one, speech number 10, my company, or not just my company, but a person from HR, right, or the head of HR, asked me, so Eric, our boss wants, our manager, right, the factory manager wants the supervisors to make a presentation about how they use contractors. And you're going to be the first person to present. So I made my presentation and it went very well. In fact, the factory managers said, okay, very good, Eric. Now, he told the others, okay, prepare the next supervisor who will be making his presentation and tell him to get Eric's template and ask him to teach him how to make a presentation. That's one of the things that happened to me after I learned how to speak in public. So that was it. In the next video, I am going to be talking about the conclusion of the speech. And this is where you will see, because speech number 10 is about inspiring people. And this part, or that part, the next video, is where I'm going to attempt to inspire the audience who are my fellow Toastmasters to continue their development as public speakers. So I'll see you in that video. Thank you for watching. God bless and stay safe.